Now, with me here on set now is Yuka Roy. We're going to have a look at the election result and how it's rattling not just the political world, but also the business sector too. Yuka, how are the markets reacting to this news then?
Well, the shock waves have ripped through the financial markets, especially the currency market, Stuart. The British pound has taken a knock. It fell 2% to a two-month low. Immediately after voting ended and the first exit poll results came in. It has since recovered a bit, but it's still trading down over 1.5% against the dollar. Now, the European stock market opened just a short while ago with London's FTSE 100 opening a bit higher, but that's what generally happens when sterling drops, so not a lot of surprise there. The UK bank shares, though, are mostly trading in the red. The rest of European markets are moving cautiously. Now over to Asia earlier. UK-exposed shares were also under pressure in Asian trading today, but otherwise the stock markets have been mixed there. Now, for more on this, we can now cross over to Craig Earlham, Senior Analyst at Wanda in London. Craig, how much of a shock is this for the financial sector?
I don't think it's entirely a shock. I think it's gone against the grain per se. I think in the lead up to the actual exit polls, I think the market seemed to have priced in a Tory majority, and in some cases quite a large Tory majority. I think the general consensus was that they would achieve this, probably gain a few seats from where they were. But I think the possibility was always there that the hung parliament was going to happen. I think we've seen a lot of campaigning from Labour for the younger vote, and this turned out to be crucial when the election did come around. I think the question now is what's next, because really the hung parliament has the possibility to weigh quite heavily on things like the pound, simply due to the fact that it has the potential to delay these negotiations. Now, I heard that the Conservatives have entered into negotiations with the DUP, and should these be resolved quickly and we start to move forward and we can actually begin Brexit negotiations in 10 days' time, then I think markets will rebound nicely, and if it fails, then there could be more downside to come.
And how worried are investors over the prospect of this hung parliament?
I think people are concerned. I think there is plenty of scope at the moment for it to be avoided. Like I say, with the DUP favouring a hard Brexit, it seems that they have something in common with the Conservatives, and between the two of them, they do have the ability to cross that threshold of 326 seats and proceed forward as planned. And they also, of course, have the possibility of joining with the SNP as well, but I imagine they'd have to offer further concessions with this party. So while these options are available, I think the markets are going to be relatively cautious, but a little bit stable. And then, like I said, we're going to have to wait and see how things proceed over the next few days.
And recent economic data shows that the prospect of Brexit negotiations that are looming, just coming in a few days' time, have already started to have an impact on real economy. What are investors expecting in the coming days and months, and is this downward trend for sterling going to continue?
I think the trend for sterling is going to heavily depend on how these negotiations go and whether we're going to see a hung parliament leading to a second election. I think that's going to have the biggest impact on sterling. As you said, the economic data is starting to show signs of wear and tear at the moment. We're seeing signs that the consumer squeeze, driven by higher inflation and stagnant wages, is having an impact on spending, and that's such an important part of the economy that it was inevitable that this was going to start to show. Should we can see further signs of this in the coming months at a time when Brexit negotiations start, then sure, we could see sterling come under a little bit of pressure. But ultimately, I think where sterling trades over the next weeks and months is going to depend far more on the negotiations either between the parties or re-elections or etc., far more than the economic data.
Craig Earlham in London there. Thank you.
Yeah, as Yuka mentioned there, those Brexit jitters already seem to be affecting the British economy, don't they, Yuka?
Right. The vote comes at a time Britain's economy has already been under pressure. Just a couple of days ago, as Craig just mentioned there, the OECD predicted that the UK's economy will slow down next year. And the latest Eurostat figures show that Britain had the lowest GDP growth rate in the whole of the EU in the first quarter of this year. Now, Catherine Viette has this story to explain in detail.
A plunge for the pound as traders react to the UK's general election results, and shockwaves are felt throughout the financial markets. The pound dropped about 2%, down to $1.27 before recovering slightly, but markets are remaining cautious. Now that the Conservatives have lost their majority in Parliament, fears are growing the political turmoil could complicate or delay Brexit talks, which are due to start in a week and a half. The OECD has already predicted a Brexit-related slowdown for the British economy. GDP growth is forecast to hit 1.6% this year and barely 1% next year. Rising inflation combined with the falling pound means consumer spending has taken a hit. Inflation rose from 0.8% before the referendum last year to 2.6% in April. And according to the Bank of England, it could reach 3% by the end of the year. As for the Eurozone, the UK has also recorded the lowest GDP growth rate in the EU so far, just 0.2%, far lower than the 0.6% average.
Catherine Viet reporting there. Thanks, Yuka. Yuka looking at the business news for us. Let's bring you up to date then if you're just tuning in to the programme. The figures that have been coming into us over the last few hours now. The Conservatives have 315 seats, down 12 on where they were before. They needed 326 for that majority, so well below there. In the last half hour, the bits of news coming into us, according to UK media, Theresa May's Conservatives in talks now with Northern Ireland's DUP after that inconclusive election. We also had a spokesman from Labour saying they will try and form a minority government as well. And we're also hearing from UK media that Theresa May does not imagine that she's going to resign. She's due to speak apparently around about 10 o'clock British time, so that's 11 o'clock Paris time. The very latest then, right after the break, here on France 24.